Yes, Assalamualaikum. Our topic for today is the correlation and the scatter plot. Okay, so as we know, before we conduct the correlation analysis, first of all, you need to check whether there is a linear relationship between your independent variable and dependent variable. So we have two steps to check for the relationship between the variables, which is using the scatter plot, and also we can use the Pearson correlation coefficient test. Okay, so for the first one, we um, look at the scatter plot. Okay, we do a revision how to draw the scatter plot and how to observe the scatter plot and interpret the uh, the plot ataupun the the point that scatter in the plot, whether it is linear or not. Okay. Alright, a scatter plot can be helpful in determining the existence and describing the nature of relationship between the two variables, which is x and y. Okay, x will plotted in the horizontal axis, which is x-axis, and dependent variable y is plotted on the vertical axis, which is y-axis. Okay, when we have more than one x, we should have different scatter plot for y versus x. So if we have x1, x2, and so on, nanti later when we uh, enter for multiple linear regression, we will have several of x. So you need to test ataupun observe the scatter plot of y and each of the x, y dengan x1, y dengan x2 and so on. Sebab scatter plot kita kena buat untuk satu-satu untuk only for two variables. Okay, so kalau ada several x, so we need to have the several scatter plot. Okay, some possible form would be linear, quadratic, cubic, exponential and etc. So kita nak check whether our scatter plot is linear or not. Sebab kita nak tahu, sebab when we want to proceed with the regression analysis, the relationship between the y and the x should be linear relationship. Okay, furthermore, through a scatter plot, we also can conclude about the direction of the relationship, whether it is appear to be positive or negative direction. Okay, the strength of the relationship can also be observed through the how closely the points in the data are gathered around the form. Okay, so also from the scatter plot, we can see whether the relationship is positive or negative. Okay, apa maksud positive relationship? There is when x increase, y also will increase. Okay, negative relationship pula, when x increase, y will be decrease. Okay, and also from there we can observe the strength of the relationship. Tapi dengan mata kasar kita maybe a little bit different from one person to one person. Every individu dia akan tengok some of the individu we observe the scatter plot as moderate contohnya. So another person will observe it as uh, apa ni strong. So using the scatter plot, we can observe the strength, but it is not accurate to confirm the strength of the relationship between this y and x. We should use the types of the we should use the Pearson correlation coefficient. So later we can see the formula. Okay, so this is the example of the types of the scatter diagram, or the varieties of the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. So as you know, when we want to draw the scatter diagram, what we need to do is first kena ada title, wajib kena ada title, and then labeling the y-axis and x-axis means that you kena letaklah nama, the name of the independent variable and the name of your dependent variable. Then just plot the scatter diagram, all the point here, according to the data that we have from y and x. Okay, according to y and x. Alright. And then from there, so dia akan jadi nampak macam ni. Cuma your scatter diagram should not have the line di sini. Kalau scatter diagram sahaja, no need to put the line here. Okay, line here actually adalah dia nak tunjukkan macam mana dia punya trend sahaja in this example. Okay. Alright. So for graph A, okay, the diagram of A, this is the example of a linear relationship, which is the positive linear relationship between x and y. Okay, means that the plot create the positive trend ataupun positive slope. So we name it as the positive linear relationship. Okay, this diagram pula kita tengok dia ada negative trend. Okay, it creates the negative trend. So we name it as the negative linear relationship between y and x. Okay, this is the types of non-linear relationship between y and x. Yang kita nak to proceed with the linear regression, we need to make sure our data ataupun scatter diagram is like this, A or B. Okay, which is the linear relationship. Then we can proceed with linear regression. Okay, if not, okay, if you get all of these types of scatter diagram, means that there is no linear relationship between your y and x, so we need to proceed with the other analysis or we can transform the data. Okay, so ini contoh curvilinear ataupun quadratic. Okay, ini pun quadratic. Okay, ini exponential dan ini curvilinear. Okay, and then, okay, if your scatter diagram look like this two diagram, means that the point scattered, okay, the point scattered randomly without create any trend, whether it is positive or negative trend. So there is no relationship between y and x. Okay, ini pun contoh no relationship, which is the point create the horizontal line. Okay, so we can say that the relationship is there is no relationship between y and x. Okay, the next one ni pula adalah contoh of the strength of the relationship between y and x. Okay, A ni dan B adalah example of strong relationship, which we can see that the point berada dekat-dekat and create the positive line. Sama juga for this one. Okay, untuk C dan D adalah example for the weak relationship. Okay, so we can see the difference between these two scatter diagram. Okay, but to check for the strength of the relationship, suggested to use the other technique because of opinion of every individual is not the same, as some people see that the scatter diagram is moderate, not weak, but some people saying that there is a moderate relationship. So dengan mata kasar dia kurang sesuai untuk nak check the strength of the relationship. So lagi sesuai kita gunakan Pearson correlation coefficient, which is the value of R, if you can remember. Okay, ni notationnya R. This is the formula. Okay, this formula, which is this part. Kalau kat sini dalam your textbook ni dekat page 83, di sini this part dia digunakan Y1 dengan Y2. Okay, if we have kalau kita punya data kita ada X dengan Y. Okay, so biasanya pun kita gunakan formula of X dengan Y kan, which is this part yang atas ni adalah SXY, which is the summation XY minus summation X multiply summation Y divided by N, is it? Okay, divide dengan square root of SXX multiply SYY. Remember, that is the formula to get the value of R, which is the correlation, Pearson correlation coefficient, which is as xy divide square root of as xx multiply as y. So as xx multiply as y. Okay, and then as you know, the value of the Pearson correlation coefficient will lies between negative 1 and 1. Okay, dia tak boleh lebih dari 1. And then dia ada sign negative. Okay, if R equal to 0 means that there is no correlation between the two variables, which is X and Y. Kalau let's say after this kita in multiple regression, we can check the correlation between the X1 dengan X2 macam tu. So at this point, I just explain on X and Y dulu, okay? So if R equal to 0 means that there is no relationship, there is no linear relationship between X and Y. Okay, if R di antara, okay, berada di antara 0.1 and 0.3, okay, there is a weak positive relationship between X and Y. If your R is between 0.4 and 0.6, it is positive, moderate, linear relationship between X and Y. If your R lies between 0.7 and 0.9, okay, means that there is a positive, strong relationship between X and Y. If your R is equal to 1, so we can say that the correlation is perfect positive between perfect positive linear relationship between X and Y. If the sign that you get is negative here or here, so kita tukar kat depannya, there is a negative weak correlation between weak linear, kena ada perkataan linear, there is a negative weak linear correlation between X and Y and so on. Okay, so that is the way how you interpret the value of R when you calculate this value. Okay, I nak tunjukkan okay the plot when apa ni when we draw the scatter diagram and when we calculate the value of R. Okay, let's say, like, look at this diagram. When we draw the scatter diagram of Y versus X here, this is the diagram that we have. So seems here there is no linear relationship between Y and X, right? Because of the points scattered, right? There is no pattern, there is no trend, any trend. Okay, so betul lah, but when we calculate the value of R is 0. Okay, let's say this. Okay, this diagram, if we can see, kalau kita tengok dengan mata kasar, it is like no relationship juga kan, sebab there is no trend. But actually, when we calculate the value of R, the value of R is 0.1. So it means that there is a linear relationship, but it is weak positive linear relationship between these two variables. Okay, this one is the still weak relationship between Y and X. This is the moderate relationship. This is the boleh dikatakan strong, ya, 0.7. It is strong dan nampak dia punya trend. Okay, lagi nampak. So this is the strong relationship. This is 0.9. This is 0.95. Okay, almost very strong, almost perfect. Okay, so this is the formula that I said just now. Sxy, this part, divide dengan square root of Sxx minus multiply Syy. So when we get this value of R, so we can interpret according to the this value. Some of the textbook, kalau you tengok, ada juga yang mengatakan 0.7 still moderate, okay, 0.4 is still weak. Okay, some of the textbook ada cakap macam tu, ada beberapa mazhab, but we can use this mazhab. Okay. Alright, so that is the value of the Pearson correlation coefficient. Then to confirm to the linear relationship between X and Y exists or not, we can do the test. Okay, testing for the R ataupun rho, dia punya notation. Okay, so this hypothesis will test the correlation, the linear relationship between X dan Y, between two variables. Okay, there is a linear relationship or not. Okay, the hypothesis is rho equal to 0. Kalau tak nak tak rho 1, 2 pun tak apa. Rho equal to 0, rho not equal to 0. Means that this is the two-tailed test. Okay. Alright. So kalau nak tulis beta pun, gunakan beta pun tak ada masalah. Sebab now we deal dengan beta 1 lah, maksudnya dekat sini slope. Okay, because of we deal with simple linear regression, the slope adalah dia punya beta 1, right? So whether you write like this, rho ataupun gunakan nilai beta 1 pun tak ada masalah. Yang ni adalah contoh kalau kita ada dua variable. Dua variable bukan X dengan Y. Maksudnya tak semestinya X dengan Y. So dia buat first variable and second variable. Okay, so the test statistic will be this. The value of Pearson correlation coefficient multiply square root of sample size minus 2 ataupun number of observation minus 2 divide dengan square root of 1 minus value R tadi square. Okay, and then it follows the T table, T distribution. Okay, kita akan gunakan T table untuk check the critical region. Okay, whether it is reject hash not, or fail to reject hash not. So we reject hash not. We reject hash not if the t statistic, absolute value of t statistic, is more than, reject hash not. Okay, we reject hash not if t absolute value of the t statistic more than the value of the table, critical value of the table. So like I said before this, kalau we use the t table from this textbook, we will use 1 minus alpha over 2 untuk two-sided test. If you use the stat table yang merah tu, so kat sini it just t alpha over 2 and minus 2 untuk reject hash not. If hash not is rejected, okay, if hash not is rejected, kita reject hash not, kita conclude this one. So means that value of R ni ada value whether it is negative or positive, tapi that no, not zero. So means that there is a we can significantly suggest that there is linear relationship between x and y. Okay, yang ni pula adalah contoh when we want to see whether the correlation is positive. Okay, pun boleh. Kita boleh check. Cuma dia akan jadi one-sided test lah. Okay, so kat sini kita baca, a national oil company was interested in the relationship between its service station gasoline sales and its sales of auxiliary product. A company analyst obtained a random sample of 23 of its service station and obtained average monthly sales on gasoline sales and comparable sales auxiliary product and services. This data resulted in an estimated correlation which is 0.52. Suppose the analyst wish to test whether or not the association is positive. Dia nak test whether or not the association was positive. Okay, nak tahu positif ke tidak. So dia punya hash 1 ataupun the alternative hypothesis will be rho more than 0. This is one-sided test. So macam biasa guna nak kira t statistik macam tadi juga, which is the value of R multiply square root of n minus 2, 23 minus 2 divide dengan 1 minus R square. So we'll get 2.79 and compare with, okay ni, we reject hash not if this t statistic without absolute value more than t alpha over 2 and minus 2. If we reject hash not, so we conclude alternative hypothesis means that there is a positive linear relationship between the two variables. Okay, you should mention the name of the variables. You also can check whether your value of R, the correlation between the two variable is negative. So dia akan bertukar kat sini lah. Less than 0. You punya rho less than 0. Kat atas ni hash not rho more than or equal to 0. The test statistik yang sama, but the decision rule yang berbeza. Okay, which we can reject hash not if t statistic less than negative t alpha saja, sorry, bukan alpha over 2. Tadi saya tercakap alpha over 2 kan. Kat sini sebab one sided test, so it just alpha saja. Kalau gunakan tabel merah, t alpha and minus 2. Okay, so that is the way how you calculate ataupun you test whether we conduct the test to make sure your two variables x and y are linear, have the linear relationship or not. Okay, ini contoh sama juga macam tadi. Okay, let's see the example. Okay, yang ni adalah example house price dan home size. Okay, this is the data. House price adalah Y dan independent adalah home size. So when we draw the scatter diagram, kena ada title, and then kat sini missingnya, kat sini sepatutnya ada labeling of axis Y dan X. Y tadi adalah house price. Okay, price of house. So, kena letaklah sepatutnya kat sini. Price. Okay, and then here adalah home size. Okay, home size kena letak labeling of x-axis dan y-axis. Then you just plot the scatter diagram. So we can see here there appear the positive linear relationship between price of house and home size. This is the interpretation of the scatter diagram. Okay, remember to get the full mark, kena ada title, labeling of x-axis dan y-axis, all the points here, and then interpret. Okay, find the Pearson correlation coefficient, give the further interpretation. Okay, let's say we calculate all this value, okay, all this summation. Actually, you can get it from the calculator, right? When you key in the value of x and y, you will have all this summation and apply the formula of R. Okay. Actually, dalam your calculator pun, you boleh dapatkan terus nilai R, but for the exam oriented, you kena tulis semua, kena calculate the value of R here, the value of SXY, SYY semua ni kena tulis, make sure kena ada calculation, how you get the final answer. So here we'll get 0.76. So there is moderate. Some books, like I said just now, it is saying that 0.7 is still moderate, but we can consider a strong positive relationship between x and y. Okay, the next question is test the hypothesis to determine whether there exists linear relationship between these two variables. So this is the hypothesis. Like I said just now, whether you can put row sahaja, nak letak row 1 tu pun boleh, nak letak beta pun boleh. This is the test statistic. So we get 3.329 using all the value that given. And then we compare it with the critical region here. So kat sini kalau gunakan tabel merah, so it will be alpha over 2 and minus 2. So lastly we get 2.3060. So cuba you kena try untuk tengok tabel yang you ada lah, gunakan tabel yang you ada. Make sure that you are familiar with the t-table. Yes, t-table. Okay, since that here the value of test statistic more than the value of critical value from t-table, so we reject hash not. So the conclusion is we have enough evidence to conclude that there is a linear association between home price and home size. Okay, so that is the example. Alright, so that is all for this lesson.